Welcome back, everyone, to the Long View. I'm Julian Zelizer,
And I'm Jonathan Alter of Old Goats.
and this is Then and Now. And I was thinking, as the most recent round of the Epstein files is breaking, and you sent out a very provocative post on it, I was thinking back to 1998 when the scandal around President Clinton really accelerated, and thinking about why some scandals become big political issues, others don't. There were a lot of big differences with that one. The issue itself was quite different. There was an independent prosecutor at the time, part of a 1978 law, a post Watergate law, and the prosecutors, Ken Starr, really drove it. It was a different media age. And of course, it was a divided government with Republicans in control, a Democrat in the White House. But it was a story. There were many scandals, many investigations into Clinton. And I don't think everyone suspected a relationship with a White House intern, Monica Lewinsky, would turn into the one that becomes a big political problem, certainly, and challenge for the president, for the Democratic Party. I was just thinking back at how that unfolded, a certain amount of unpredictability, and at the same time, how it became a way in which his opponents saw other issues through that prism. And that gave it some of its influence. So, how do you think of that and how it might help think about what's going on right now?
Well, I was very involved in the coverage of the Lewinsky story. And actually, the day that it broke, and it had broken on the Drudge Report and in the magazine I worked for, Newsweek, Michael Isikoff, I said this could lead to impeachment. I said it on MSNBC, and people thought I was a fool for saying that because it wasn't even clear it was true. And then Clinton denied it. He said, I did not have sex, but what happens is when it involves sex, and this has always been true, going back to the ancient Romans who had their own sex scandals, it seizes public attention. And then when there are various permutations to it, when it's not, there's not any kind of easy endpoint, then it becomes, to use a sexual metaphor, like a bad case of herpes. It goes away for a while and then it comes back. And that's what happened with the Lewinsky story. It happened with Watergate. It goes underground for a little while and then there's another development. So in this story, what we're going to see is a vote in the House of Representatives on releasing the files, a vote in the Senate on releasing the files. Then, if it passes in both of those places, which I think it probably will, then Donald Trump has to decide whether to veto it. If he does that, that would be very unpopular, but he could probably bottle up some of these documents. Then there could be other women who we saw. We now know that Epstein says he was with Virginia Giuffre, but it's hard to believe. She was the only woman that Donald Trump was with at Jeffrey Epstein's. I find that a little bit hard to believe. So some women who in the past might not have had the courage to come forward for some very good reasons, maybe now they find that courage. Other things start to break in this. You have other leaks. Now you have Trump doing something I think is very, very stupid, which is to say, well, they should release the files on the Democrats. Well, that can't happen. If they're going to release files on the Democrats, they have to release files on him too. That's a sign of desperation. But if some Democrats are implicated, the way Larry Summers was in some of those files this week, that also fuels the story because then Republicans want to hear more and it becomes a bipartisan call for more documents. And that's already begun. And that doesn't mean he's going to be impeached, doesn't mean he's going to have to resign, but this will bedevil Donald Trump until the end of his days.
Well, that's an interesting way to think and learn from that earlier scandal and how it unfolded. And I think those are wise words. So that was then.
No, we're
Yeah,
not done yet.
go ahead. We
Because
control the end. So
yeah. So I'm sorry, I forgot to ask
yeah.
you a question. So, you have studied Watergate.
Yeah.
and other scandals in American history. So do you see some comparisons there that we could learn from?
Yeah, I mean, look, the obvious one with Watergate is the cover up. It became bigger, not simply because more information comes out, which it does, but by acting to stop it, a president reifies the concerns people have, amplifies the sense
Wait, you
there's
can't
much.
use that, Julian. You can't use an academic word like that on then
It
and now. What do you mean by reifies? What
it
does that mean?
solidifies kind of the ideas people have about a president, and it really makes them firmer by saying and by giving evidence that they're trying to stop the investigation, and then trying to stop the investigation. And this became part of the Clinton scandal as well. Then becomes a bigger part of the scandal,
Right.
and I think
Point.
a lot of look, this has both. That's what makes it potent. You have substance with Epstein that's very damning and horrific. And now you have, and it's happening in the opening. That's how everything happens in the Trump presidency. He's sitting in the Situation Room, kind of desperately trying to stop this information from coming out. So I see a lot of elements from those earlier scandals and Watergate as well in the dynamics of how this is playing out.
Yeah, and that's what brought Nixon down was the cover up.
Yeah.
I think in this case, if it turns out that Trump had sex with underage girls, the cover up won't be worse than the crime.
Yeah.
But both of them are sapping a lot of his political support, and he's already plummeting in the polls.
And ironically, just I'll finish on this that in the Republican world, in the MAGA world, the cover up is in some ways really what's fueling conspiracy. The conspiracy is about all these networks that are hiding things and protecting things as much as what they do. And so this, I think, is part of the reason you see some Republican fracture, because this is exactly what, he and they keep warning about how politics works.
Yeah, great point.
All right.
Okay,
We'll talk again next week, John.
bye bye.
Bye.